I thought marriage meant safety. I thought the woman I loved built a life with me. Then one night I watched her laugh at a number I didn't know. The laugh was different. Her eyes were different. My chest went cold. Houston lights blurred outside the window. I held a phone that didn't belong to me. A message lit the screen. That message broke something inside me. I didn't know then how far I would go. But I knew this. Nothing would stay the same. The truth was about to wake up, and so would I. My name is Andrew. I'm 52. I work in real estate. I come home tired. I come home proud. Our house sits on a quiet block in Houston. The iron gates outside creak at night. The porch light throws long shadows. People wave when they pass. This is family territory. Neighbors know us. Church folks nod hello. Barbecue smoke rides the street on Sundays. That smell is comfort. Monique and I fell in love slow. She's 44. She wears her hair long and proud. She cooks with a rhythm. We sip coffee on the back porch. Mornings are her laugh, my paper, the cat jumping between our knees. Our bed holds years of small things, blankets, late-night talk, whispered plans. The house is warm. It has her perfume in the linen closet. It has my suit in the hall. We have a routine. I fix things. She handles the calendar. We argue about small stuff. She says I'm too serious. I tell her to smile more. We kiss and move on. Family comes over for dinner. Cousins talk loud. Aunties bring sweet potato pies. The kids' birthdays fill the den with balloons. People know we're steady. We give back. We show up. But the little things change first. I notice the empty hooks where her jackets used to hang. I notice her phone face down, buzzing under a pillow. She calls in late sometimes. She laughs off my questions with a shrug. Work stuff, she says. Girl stuff. I believe her. I want to believe her. On the nights she stays out late, I sit on the porch and listen. The city hums. Streetlights blink. Somewhere a radio plays slow. I think about our vows. I think about our kids. Even when it's just the two of us at home, their pictures watch from the mantel. I feel safe. Mostly. Then a neighbor drops by. You seeing Monique much? He asks like he knows. I laugh it off, but the laugh tastes hollow. There's a small bruise in the air, an unease I can't name. I put it down to work stress. I sleep, but the sleep is shallow. My dreams are the kind that wake you sweating. Something is off. I should have listened. But I let it sit like a stone in my shoe. I didn't know it would cut the whole foot open. The next evening, I found a clue that would not be easy to ignore. The first time I noticed real change, it was in the way she moved around the house. Monique used to leave lights on. She'd hum while cooking. Now the house felt staged. She moved with a different cadence. Short steps, quiet hands. She'd stand at the sink and stare out the window like she was expecting someone else to pull up. Her phone became a living thing in our home. It buzzed and she tucked it away like it was contraband. She learned to silence it before she walked into a room. Once, I saw her quickly switch to a blank screen when I peeked. I felt the room tighten. My throat went dry. Everything okay? I asked one night at dinner. I kept my voice soft. I wanted honesty. She smiled. It was small. Just tired, babe, she said. Work been crazy. She pushed her plate away and laughed like it was nothing. I heard something in that laugh. It was practiced. I started watching her habits like a man watching weather patterns. New clothes appeared in the bedroom, not the casual dresses I'd bought her for church. These were sharp, expensive. Labels I didn't recognize. Her hair was different, styled, deliberate. She had a new perfume that smelled like citrus and something floral I couldn't place. It wasn't wrong for her to look good, but the energy felt like a shift. I remember one night clearly. She was in the living room, one leg folded under her on the couch. The TV muttered in the background. She had a glass in her hand. The city lights painted stripes on the floor. Her phone buzzed. She checked it and smiled so quick I could have missed it. She answered, "Hey," in a voice that wasn't for me. The name she said, quiet, intimate, stuck in the air. I felt the blood leave my face. I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I watched her. I moved like a man on a chessboard, calm, counting. My questions came out small. You good? You been sleeping? You seem distant. She'd look at me and say, I'm fine, Andrew. The eyes would slide away. Hands would fidget with a ring. Small defenses. She started making excuses for the late nights. Client dinners, project reviews, girls' night. The list went on. A few times I tried to join her at an event. She declined. "It's just work, babe. You don't need to stress." The tone felt apologetic and sharp. I found receipts tucked under the couch. A bar downtown, an Uber at 2 in the morning, small things. Each one was a pebble dropped into a pond. The ripples reached me. I asked my sister about it. She said, "Girlfriend been talking with somebody." My cousin shrugged when we ran into him. "She's been seeing someone." They didn't say names. They weren't sure. They sounded like they were trying not to hurt me. I thanked them and walked back to my car with heat in my chest. At night, I tried to catch her in a lie. I listened for door sounds. I watched her sleep. I watched her get out of bed and check her phone in the dark. She would place the phone face down under the pillow, breathing even, pretending to sleep. My hands shook when I reached for it once. I pulled back. I couldn't cross that line. Not yet. There was a different confidence in her step now. Not the easy, homegrown grace. It was tight, polished. She wore it like armor. And then there were the calls that ended when I walked into a room, the quick text deletes, the way she straightened her shoulders when a certain name popped up on the screen. I felt like I was losing a houseplant I'd watered for years. I still loved her. I still worried about our kids, about the family they knew. I tried to imagine a reason that didn't destroy us. Maybe it was work. Maybe I missed something. But I also held a small, burning kernel of fear. The fear grew with each small sign. I started to plan without knowing it. I listened more than spoke. I watched more than acted. One night, as she returned from a late meeting, I walked past her in the hallway. Her perfume hit me first, sweet and sharp. She smiled, but her eyes flicked away. In the dim light, I saw her phone light up with a message preview, words not meant for me. She tucked it into her purse, but the preview had been enough. That was the first obvious sign, the one I couldn't explain away. I held my breath. The house seemed to tilt. I knew then that something was true, I just didn't know how true. The next day, I found something in our bedroom drawer that changed the shape of everything. I kept my hand steady when I opened the drawer. It felt like a test. I told myself I was looking for an old charger. The drawer smelled like cedar and dryer sheet. My fingers brushed envelopes, old receipts, a lipstick I recognized. Then I saw it, a small card folded tight. Not ours, not something I had seen before. The name on it was a business card, but it wasn't a business. It had a number and a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. The ink smudged where she'd tucked it. I felt a cold bloom in my chest. I put the card down and kept looking. My hand found a photo tucked behind an old tax statement. It was her, at a restaurant I didn't know, laughing with a man whose face I could only half see. He had an expensive watch. The laugh in the photo was the same one I'd heard, different but the same. My breathing bumped hard. The room shrank. The walls pressed. I had to sit. I remember the couch under my fingers, its fabric rough and familiar. I felt my pulse loud in my ears. I thought of our vows. I thought of every time we'd said forever into each other's faces. The sound of the word broke like glass inside me. I took the phone from the other room. Monique was in the kitchen humming. The light from the oven painted her face. I held the phone like evidence. I didn't want to be a man who stalked, but I needed to know. I tapped the messages and found threads that pulled at me like threads on a sweater. Names I didn't recognize, photos she'd sent, texts with moments that were private, intimate. I read one where she wrote, "Can't wait to see you tonight." It wasn't for me. My hands shook. I felt heat in my palms. I could hear my own breathing. I imagined confronting her right then. I could see her face, confused, then guilty, then cold. I thought about the kids. I thought about family. I thought about church. I thought about the quiet humiliation that would wake in our street if I blew up the house. So I stepped back. I closed the phone. I stood there in the kitchen like I'd been dropped into a film I hadn't auditioned for. I watched her move, unaware. She sliced an apple. The metallic sound of the knife was loud. She hummed a gospel song under her breath. The domestic scene stung me with contrast. That night I didn't sleep. I went through things slowly. I copied messages. I took screenshots. I found bank transfers I hadn't seen, small ones at first, then bigger. I found reservations. Hotel names cropped up. I found a receipt for an expensive restaurant downtown with a name and the initials of a man I'd never met. He had money written all over him, real money. I felt the truth press into me like a fist. When she finally came to bed, she was soft and warm. I could smell the perfume again. I could feel the steady rise and fall of her breath. The sheets remembered our bodies. Her rolls of hair brushed my arm as she turned. She rolled toward me and murmured, "Night, babe." I closed my eyes and nodded. The words clung to me. My heart felt like someone had hollowed out a place inside me. The next morning I pretended like nothing happened. I kissed her on the cheek and headed to work. My face was composed. Inside I was scripting moves. I started to follow. Not like a man lost, like a man mapping his future. I paid attention to how she drove, where she stopped, what names came up. I learned who she called. I learned what hours she left the house. I learned to be patient. One afternoon I sat in the car 2 blocks away from a restaurant. My hands folded on the steering wheel. The light hit the dash like glass. She walked out with a man, walked into a life she'd kept from me. He put an arm around her waist like a claim. They laughed. He smelled like money and cologne. My lungs burned. I watched them get into a black car and drive away. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I didn't move. My body went cold hot. I felt every year of our marriage scroll by in my mind. The church, the baptisms, our laughter. The other man's laugh echoed in that small car. I realized then this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a phase, it was a choice. I drove home slowly. The house felt different when I opened the gate. The walls seemed to pull back as if to let me know I had been replaced. I sat on the porch and smoked a cigarette even though I hardly ever did. The smoke curled up and the night swallowed it. I understood something critical. I could burn it all down in anger, or I could dismantle it with calm. I chose the latter. That night I told myself the plan would be quiet. It would be precise. I would not be a spectacle. I would be a judge with a steady hand. The pieces were on the table. I just had to move them right. The next step would make everything clear. The night I decided to act, I slept like a man who had remembered how to breathe. I don't explode. I build. I learned to hold my face like a mask. I learned to smile at the dinner table and move like the man I'd always been. But inside I was cataloging dates, receipts, calls, nights. I created folders on my phone. I labeled them carefully. Receipts, numbers, photos, transfers. The folders felt like armor. I hired a private investigator, not flashy, just someone quiet who could follow without drama. He reported back in short notes. Hotels, late-night dinners, a fancy building downtown where the man had an office. The investigator called him L, a shadow with a name that would show up on bank statements. I started moving money the way a chess master moves pieces. I consulted my lawyer under the pretense of business. I shifted accounts into trusts. I set up new passwords on joint holdings. I moved our investments into instruments that required both signatures. I didn't touch our kids' college fund. That line was sacrosanct. But I made sure the house title, business accounts, and cards were protected. While I built walls around our finances, I kept smiling. I brought her coffee in the morning. I asked about her day. I scheduled date nights, quiet, steady, the kind that said, "We are okay." My voice was soft. My hands didn't tremble. Sometimes she would lean into me and I would hold her like I loved her. Those were the hardest moments. My chest ached. I wanted to scream. I wanted to leave. But I stayed. I stayed to make sure when the truth came out it would be clean. Friends began to notice. My cousin Jay called and said, "You different, bro." I told him I was focused. He didn't pry. My sister dropped by one Saturday and hugged me longer than usual. Auntie sent casseroles like nothing was wrong. There were people who could sense the tension and those who couldn't. I learned to be a stage actor at home. I collected more than proof. I collected patterns. The man L had habits. He paid for expensive dinners. He made transfers. He had a hub downtown. I tracked his companies. I didn't want to ruin a life, only the lie. I wanted what was fair. I wanted the safety of my family. When Monique asked me about a withdrawal one afternoon, I kept my voice even. "It's a work thing," I said. "I'll handle it." She smiled, satisfied. That smile used to be my sun. Now it was the very thing I was using to light a different path. At night, I sat at my desk with a lamp that threw a pool of yellow light. I opened envelopes. I compared handwriting. I matched dates. I made copies. The glow from the screen turned my face gray. I felt like a surgeon, steady hands, careful incisions. I made a backup drive and hid it in a safe deposit box under a name she wouldn't think to check. I also made moves to protect myself emotionally. I started seeing a counselor, not because I wanted to fix us necessarily, but to make sure I stayed anchored. The counselor taught me to name my feelings. "You're grieving a life you thought you had," she said. Those words gave me permission to feel without acting like a loose cannon. There were nights the house was full of laughter because I invited friends over. Monique danced in the kitchen. The music was loud. I watched her smile and felt nothing but a stone of resolve. I kept my hands in my pockets and let the scene play out. I rehearsed the confrontation in my head like a speech. I practiced being calm. I practiced silence. The strategy included legal threads too. I arranged consultations with a divorce attorney under the pretense of estate planning. I learned what the law would do. I learned how community property worked, how to secure titles, how to freeze accounts. I asked questions not out of anger but out of necessity. Each answer was another piece of the plan. People asked me if I forgave her. I would say, "I have to protect what I built." The truth was uglier. I wanted Monique to face what she'd done. I wanted her to know that choices have consequences. I wanted to show the community that betrayal doesn't get a free pass. But I also wanted to leave room for repair if she truly wanted to change. That part of me was small and quiet. I kept living the life we'd made in front of others. I kept my face composed. Inside, I prepared documents, scheduled meetings, and numbered days. I knew when to strike would matter. It had to be a moment when the evidence could not be waved away. It had to be public enough to be undeniable, private enough to avoid spectacle. I waited for a day that would land with gravity. The day came on a quiet evening, a date she thought was a normal anniversary dinner she'd planned with me. I let her pick the restaurant. I let her wear the dress she had bought. I smiled as she did. She didn't know I'd already set the pieces on the table. That night, I was no longer the same man. I was a man who had built justice with patience. She stood in front of me at the restaurant, soft light on her cheekbones. The table was small. The waiter drifted away with a nod. Monique had on the dress I'd seen earlier in the drawer, sharp, elegant. Her makeup was perfect. For a moment, I felt that old ache, the one that remembered first kisses and shared plans. I swallowed it down like bitter medicine. I placed my hand on the table and kept my voice low. "Monique," I said. Her eyes searched mine. "We need to talk." She laughed, nervous, aflutter. "Here, now." She tilted her head like she was being playful. I let the smile fade. I slid a thin folder across the table. The envelope was white, simple. She blinked when she saw it. Her fingers trembled a little. I watched every micro-expression. My years taught me to read people. She opened it and my evidence breathed into the space between us. Photos, receipts, printed bank transfers, hotel reservations, text transcripts. The waiter came back with bread and water. He seemed to sense the air change and kept his distance. "UNL," I said. My voice was even. The sentences stayed short. "You chose him." Her face shifted. Denial came quick. "Andrew, what is this?" she whispered. "You don't understand." She tried to fold the papers away like a small child hiding a mistake. I stopped her hand. "No," I held the folder up. "I understand very clearly." I said the names, dates, places. I matched receipts. I told her calmly about the transfers and the nights I'd waited up. I told her about the hotel in Midtown and the message previews I'd seen. Each fact landed like a measured pebble. She flinched, then pleaded. "It wasn't like you think. He promised me things. He said he'd help." "It wasn't." Her voice cracked. I watched pain bloom in her face. She started to cry, quiet at first, then loud. I felt an old part of me ache. The woman across from me was broken, and I had a folder of answers that would not soften the blow. She reached out. "Please," she begged, "please don't do this here." Her hands were wet. I set down the folder and stood. My body was steady. I kept my voice low. "I'm not trying to humiliate you," I said. "I'm trying to get the truth out, for our family." People in nearby booths shifted. A child in the next booth asked their mother a question about fries. The normalcy of it stung like salt. She tried to explain. She blamed loneliness, then excitement, then money. She called him kind things, supportive, generous. She said he made her feel seen. I listened and cataloged the words. Each one was a reason that sounded small against what she had done. "You left me with decisions I didn't make," I said. "You left our house open. You chose someone else." My voice didn't raise. My hands didn't shake. "This isn't just between us. It's about the life we built, about the neighbors who trust us, about our name." She sobbed and tried to stand, to reach me, to touch my cheek. I let her try and then stepped back. "I told you I loved you," I said. "I showed you, but love without trust is a lie." She cried harder. She begged for forgiveness. She promised to end it. She said she'd leave him. I had heard promises before. I would not be rushed by anyone's pleas. Later, in the driveway under a streetlight, I handed her the papers that would move the legal machinery. I explained calmly how I had already moved accounts to protect our assets. I told her what I would do next. She cried and shook her head and kept saying my name like a prayer. People drove by, headlights sliding over us like a film strip. There was a cultural weight in that moment, years of family expectations, of church Sundays, of black women and men carrying reputations like coats to survive winter. She had made a choice that would affect not just us, but the ones who loved us. I thought of my mother, who'd raised me to stand with dignity. I thought of the boys next door who saw men as examples. I wanted to show them strength, not spectacle. When the paperwork was delivered to her hands, she understood the gravity. She sank to the front steps and wept. I could have reached for her. I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked to my car. The neighbor waved. The night was quiet. I felt a strange peace settle in my chest, like a room finally ventilated. She knew then she'd lost more than a lover. She lost the safety we'd built together. She knew she had already lost. The community would whisper. The church would murmur. Her family would be rearranged. And yet in the quiet between our breaths, I felt the tiniest flicker of something else, my life returning to its straight line. The next morning would make things final. The outcomes didn't come like fireworks. They came steady. Legal papers moved like careful tides. The attorney filed for separation. The bank accounts we'd protected stayed firm. The house title was secure. Monique had to answer for transfers and loans taken without disclosure. The courts listened to numbers, not drama. They weighed evidence. I presented what I'd gathered. They saw the pattern. Word spread in the neighborhood in the soft way these things do. Church ladies at choir practice, barbershop talk, a cousin at a family reunion. People whispered. Some took my side. Some felt for her. The hum of gossip was its own punishment. She stopped getting invited to the Sunday cookouts the way she used to. An aunt who used to call every week texted less. The small removals cut deeper than any courtroom. Monique's relationship with Elle unraveled under light and scrutiny. Men like him don't usually like to be public. When transfers were traced, the paper trail led back to his companies. He pulled away fast. Money can solve many problems, but it can't rewrite the choices someone made at home. His support disappeared once the risk rose. She lost more than money. She lost the standing she'd enjoyed in our circle. Friends who had once smiled at her at fundraisers looked past her now. The office where she'd once been respected had murmurings in the break room. Her mother called me crying, asking what had happened to her daughter. I answered with the facts. We both sat in a silence full of old family histories. There were court hearings where we sat across from each other. I felt nothing performative. I felt a quiet satisfaction that justice, not revenge, was winning. I had not broken her. I had removed the scaffolding that hid the betrayal. The judge signed orders that protected both parties, but it was clear who had been responsible for the breach of trust. In time, people stopped talking as loudly. The street resumed its rhythm. Children played in the yard. Neighbors mowed their lawns. Life kept moving as it does. My life, too, moved forward. I sold one of my smaller properties and used the funds to start a community scholarship in my mother's name. It felt right. It felt like building something from the wreckage. Monique moved out. She took a small apartment. I left her certain things, the kids' keepsakes, the photographs, the smallest memories that would not harm our children. I set boundaries. I set the tone. I called family meetings. We talked to the kids honestly, age-appropriate truth without the nastiness. We kept them safe from the details. They needed to know love wasn't a single trait but a series of choices. They needed to know men and women can mess up and still be human. Months later, I watched her at a distance at a school event. She looked smaller. She smiled when the kids ran to her, but her confidence had the edges sanded away. Regret sat in her shoulders. I did not gloat. I felt something more complex, sorrow, relief, and a hard-earned peace. My reputation in the community changed, but not in the way I feared. People respected the way I handled things. They saw a man who protected his family and his legacy without spectacle. I found new strength in quiet mornings, walking the dog, making coffee, sitting on the porch while the city woke. The sunrise felt different. It didn't feel like victory over another. It felt like reclaiming myself. Monique reached out months later. She asked for forgiveness. She wanted to talk. I listened, but I held my boundaries. Forgiveness is not a fast thing. It's not a one-time event. It's a process. She had to rebuild a life and ask for help honestly. She had to answer to her conscience. I would not be the person to erase the lessons with a single word. In the end, she lost many things, but she kept her dignity in pieces. I kept my integrity. The neighborhood learned that actions matter. The church learned about compassion and consequence. My children learned the hard truth about love and decisions. And I, Andrew, walked away steadier, quieter, and more careful with trust. There is no grand scene where I push her out. There was only the slow, measured fallout. That's revenge turned righteous, slow, legal, and exacting. It hurt. It healed. It taught. The sunrise came like a patient witness. I drove through it and felt lighter. If you lose someone to lies, don't let rage burn your better self. Be steady. Be strategic. Protect what matters. I learned to move like water, quiet and inevitable. Love is not a trophy to be won back with one scene. It's built every day. If someone chooses another life, you deserve truth and safety, not a public showdown. To anyone going through betrayal, name your pain. Get help. Keep the kids safe. Don't let shame run your choices. You can walk away with dignity, or you can stay and fight smart. I chose the second. I did it with patience and laws, not loudness. In the end, I kept my house and my name. I kept my peace. If you're listening from Houston or anywhere, your life is worth defending. Do it with calm. Do it with courage. And when the light comes back, make something better out of the hurt.